Hey, Tom here from the Run Testers with another multi-tester shoe review. In this video, myself and 3 other run testers are going to be talking through the Hoka Carbon X3 carbon plate running shoe. Let's take a look. The Hoka Carbon X3 costs £160 or $180. It weighs in at 236 grams or 8.3 ounces, and the drop is 5mm. The Carbon X3 is the 3rd iteration of Hoka's carbon plate shoe, featuring a ProflyX foam midsole for lightweight cushioning and an updated engineered knit upper to provide a comfortable and breathable fit. The rubberized EVA used across the midsole and outsole is built to add responsiveness and grip, while an aggressive metal rocker design aims to propel the foot forward to produce an efficient ride. The shoe also includes Hoka's extended swallowtail midsole heel design and an extended heel tab to make it easier to get the shoe on and off. There's also a fully gusseted tongue.
So for me, the fit of the X3 has been true to size. It's actually quite comfortable for me around the forefoot there. I've got quite a narrow foot and it does hug it quite tightly in a comfortable way. The new upper is, I'd say, less structured than the X2 for sure, but I've got a reasonable lockdown. I think at faster paces it was maybe a bit loose and sloppy, but generally I was happy with the fit in my normal size.
The fit for me is true to size. I'm a size 8. This fits perfectly like the previous 2 versions of the shoe. One thing I would say about it is it's a Hoka, so it is slightly narrow around the midfoot of the shoe, but this upper material, the new engineered mesh, is quite elasticated, so even though it is narrow, there's a lot of give in it, so it's quite forgiving if you've got slightly wider feet, so I would say true to size.
So I'll quickly start by saying that I do love the look of this shoe. I'm all for a Larry shoe. I kind of coined this my fruit salad shoe based on this ridiculous colourway. Unfortunately, I wasn't so sweet on the fit for me. So this is a UK size 8. I found it a little bit long for me and I kind of felt like I was flapping around a little bit in this shoe. It felt like there was quite a lot of space up here in the toe box, which is fine and I kind of get why there is, but I felt for me it was a little bit too much. I actually stuck on my X2 to kind of compare. I found the fit with that shoe was a little bit more snug while still being quite accommodating. So from that kind of point of view, the fit didn't 100% work for me and I kind of felt like I was flapping around during my runs in it. So there are upper changes here, most of which didn't 100% work for me. It's definitely a more breathable shoe, I would say that, and I can see the benefits of that, particularly if you're kind of running kind of longer distances in this shoe. But for me, I didn't absolutely love the change in the kind of tongue that Hoka has gone with here, so it's kind of a more stretchy one that kind of sits nicer around the top of your foot, but actually I would prefer something a little bit more kind of locked in and a little bit tighter against the top of my foot. And these laces have kind of changed as well. I didn't really have a problem with the laces on the X2, and actually these ones are kind of a little bit softer feeling, which I can again understand, but I actually preferred something that kind of locked in a little bit nicer. So from an upper point of view, definitely more breathable, but I think the changes for me personally didn't quite work, and I would like kind of a bit more of a locked in fit.
Sizing for me, I ran in a UK 8.5, which is my normal size, and I would choose these shoes true to size, kind of perfect fit, plenty of room in the toe box, nice kind of snug hold around the midfoot. Yeah, perfect. I would go true to size if I were buying these again.
So I wasn't a very big fan of the Carbon X2. I used it for some sessions and it was okay, but around the time of testing that shoe, I just tested the Hoka Rocket X and I just much preferred that shoe all round. I'd say I still probably prefer the Rocket as the best carbon plated shoe in Hoka's lineup, but I have enjoyed testing the X3 a little bit more. I don't feel like there's been a massive change in the shoe. I do think the midsole foam used on this one is a little bit softer, a little bit bouncier, but it's not a startling change. I think probably my biggest change between my impressions of the X3 and the X2 is more to do with the type of running I've used them on, I'd say. And that's, I think, because I've mostly used this for quite easy runs, long runs, just kind of rolling along at a fairly comfortable pace, and it's the kind of shoe that makes those kind of runs feel a bit easier and your pace is a little bit better for your heart rate than you maybe expect, especially over kind of longer distances when you're past 20k, which all might feed into the idea that this is a good ultramarathon kind of road ultramarathon racing shoe. That's not something I've any experience of myself. I've only ever gone up to marathon distances, but have enjoyed it at that kind of slightly easier paces. I don't think it works well as a faster trainer. I took it straight out of the box for a session where I did an hour with 30 minutes easy and then 30 minutes at 5:40 per mile pace. just over, it's about 3:30 per k pace, slightly higher than that, which is about my marathon pace, and it just, it doesn't feel like it's giving a lot back. There's not a lot of dynamism or bounce or kind of rebound in this foam here, even with the new compound. It just lacks the punch and kind of energy that you find from other foams in the kind of top tier bracket, just better, more modern foams, I think, that are out there still, unfortunately, for Hoka. And I think that's true of top tier carbon racers, but also actually of things like the Saucony Endorphin Speed or the Puma Deviate Nitro. Those kind of training partner style shoes actually still have a bit more pop and punch to them than the Carbon X3 for me when you are working at those faster paces. So that's like I said about marathon pace, slowing it down to my kind of easy runs, normally ticking over around kind of 4:20 a k, that kind of thing, 7-minute miling, and it felt better for that. Whether that's enough here, to make this a really exciting shoe, it isn't for me, but it does feel better at those paces, and it can make those kind of rolling miles feel a little bit smoother and easier.
I've done about 60k in this shoe so far, and on the whole, I would say it's just a very solid, reliable shoe that does the job for daily training miles, and if you want to pick up the pace a little bit as well. I've used all 3 generations of the Carbon X shoes now. I really liked the original Carbon X. I thought that was a fantastic shoe that sort of took the carbon plate world by storm, because it was one of the first carbon plate shoes that came out to compete with shoes like the Vaporfly, but it wasn't a similar shoe in the sense that it was a super shoe designed for racing. It was more like a good daily trainer that really you didn't even notice the carbon plate that sat within it. I found that shoe was really good for all sorts of training runs, from standard daily training miles all the way up to faster tempo efforts and longer distance training as well. It just had a nice versatility to it that was just very enjoyable for all different types of running. The Carbon X2 I didn't enjoy very much at all. It just felt like they'd taken the Carbon X and added a lot more to the shoe, so it felt quite cumbersome. The midsole of it had a really noticeable extended heel section on it, and overall it just felt like a considerably more clunky shoe than the original Carbon X was. The Carbon X3, I think, kind of sits in the middle of those two. I don't think it feels as light or as versatile as the first shoe, but it doesn't feel clunky either like the Carbon X2 was. So although I don't think it's quite as good as the original Carbon X, I still think this is pretty close to that shoe. It's nice and versatile. It feels very sturdy. It feels very reliable when you're running in it. And I think it's just a nice, solid shoe. I'd say the carbon plate that sits within the X3, you barely even notice it. I definitely don't feel like there's a carbon plate in there, but I don't think that's a bad thing either. The Carbon X range is a nice way of using a carbon plate without it having to be a really obvious propulsive bounce like you get in the Vaporfly or something like the Metaspeed Sky. So even though it's not noticeable, I think it still is in there helping it, because it's a very good shoe for varied, versatile training, whether that's training miles or running faster. The training runs that I've done in this shoe vary between my sort of base training miles, which is about 440 minute kilometers, all the way up to track day. So I've used this for a couple of track sessions, and I think it delivered really well. It just feels like a shoe that it's not all the way lightweight. It's not all the way like a Vaporfly. It's just a solid shoe that you can run quite fast in happily, and it does the job. The thing I really like about the Carbon X3 is this new upper design that it's got on it. It feels very comfortable. It almost reminds me of something like the sock design that you get in the New Balance Fresh FM 1080 V10s and 11s. It's nice and relaxed. It feels elasticated, but it doesn't feel too loose. So that elasticated upper actually holds your foot in place quite nicely. It feels very secure, but it also feels like you've got a little bit of give in it. So it's a nice feeling for a shoe, and I'm a big fan of this upper. The midsole is a bit firmer than I'd normally like, but it's not massively firm. There's still a little bit of give in it, and I'm a big fan of cushion shoes. I always look for the softest option out there, but I still enjoy this shoe as well. It may be a bit firmer than a lot of super shoes that have carbon plates, but I think it's a very comfortable ride, and is very responsive because of that firmness as well.
In terms of the run test, I've done well over 50k in this shoe now, and I really tried to find a type of run that this shoe really excelled at. And to be honest, that didn't really happen for me. I did track sessions in it, I did kind of shorter 5k and 10k stuff. I did kind of just go out and running slow and easy. I did some kind of marathon training sessions with it as well. And it just didn't excel for me in any of those sessions. When I tried to run a bit quicker in it, I felt like I was flapping around this shoe, and then I had this kind of heel slippage, particularly on my right side, that made it really uncomfortable and awkward and just not very nice to run in. I think one run I went out and I actually turned back after an hour because I just couldn't get on with the fit and it just didn't feel right for me. When I slowed things down, where I thought maybe that's where this shoe kind of worked better, again, I felt like the shoe wanted me to kind of run a little bit quicker than that. But it almost feels like it's caught between two things. I know Hoka have put a new kind of midsole foam in here. You've got that kind of carbon fibre plate in here, that kind of aggressive meta rocker to kind of get you moving forward and a little bit quicker. But ultimately, in all the sessions that I did, I never found a run, or never came back out of a run feeling like I'd ran really nicely in this shoe. Maybe it's that one that you really have to go longer, much longer in, which, that is not my kind of level of running. I'm not an ultra runner, but even when I was doing my longer marathon training runs, I didn't really kind of feel a lot of love for this shoe in terms of what I experienced. So for me in the run test, really difficult for me. Didn't work on the shorter stuff, didn't really work on the longer stuff for me. Didn't feel great on the quicker stuff, and when I tried to run slower, it wanted me to run quicker, but it just kind of didn't work for me on that front either. So yeah, not an amazing experience for me with the X3.
Onto the run test then, and I've done probably around kind of 50 miles in these, maybe a little bit more. I like these shoes, I'm not blown away by them. I think they're sort of fairly steady, if kind of unremarkable. They didn't blow me away, and for a carbon plate shoe, I think they sort of lack the punch of some of the other competitors. But then if you go back to the first gen shoe, I kind of think that's what they were aiming for, Hoka, in terms of producing this carbon shoe that might have been geared towards doing something a little bit more like kind of longer endurance and ultras with a carbon plate. It's a little bit more subtle, but you are getting a kind of duller, it's not sort of dull, but it's a duller kind of response than you'll find from some of those other sort of more classic kind of race carbon shoes like the Vaporfly, the Alphafly. Now, if I was running a road ultra, I would say I could happily run in these all day long. I have enjoyed running in them. I do actually like them as a shoe just to pop on and go and cruise at. I think, they're not too heavy on the foot. They're not too light either, but they sort of stand a kind of middle ground. I think they give good kind of protection underfoot, good cushioning without kind of being soft. There's a little bit of response. It's not Vaporfly kind of levels of push from the plate and foam combo, but they are kind of a little bit more bouncy than some other shoes that I would run in. So I think, as a kind of regular kind of cruiser, if I was going to run an ultra marathon on the road or on really firm ground, then I think these might be an interesting option. But we're now on Gen 3 of this shoe, and I have to say, I don't think, or at least I'm not sure, that Hoka's kind of made a better shoe than the original first gen. I was quite a big fan of the first gen because it was quite kind of small and compact, and I thought it was quite nimble. There wasn't a huge amount of shoe there, but it was zippy and it had a little bit of response in a kind of lightweight form. I still think that these feel a little bit bigger on the foot overall. So I'm not sure we've really moved on. I said it for Gen 2, I'll say it for Gen 3. I just don't think they've made something that kind of really stands out better than the first gen. Having said that, I think it's a good shoe. I like it. I would run in it. I think it's a shoe that could slot into a rotation very easily. I don't think I would be picking it over and above some of the carbon shoes for racing a marathon. I think there are better shoes out there for that. I actually think that it kind of slides back into sort of the daily trainer kind of sort of area. And even then, I do think that at the price, for £160, there are probably better shoes. Well, there's some really, really stiff competition, not least from the shoe that we rave about a lot on this channel, the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2, which I just think has a lot more versatility, a lot more range in it for the price point.
So the Carbon X3, a bit like the Carbon X2, I think it's going to be marketed as a carbon shoe, a fast shoe, a speedy shoe, but also one that's tilted more towards those kind of ultra marathons. And that is important because if you're looking at as a pure speedster, a carbon plate shoe, it's not close to the top tier. Things like the Vaporfly, Alphafly, Adios Pro 2, Puma's Racer, Asics Racer, New Balance's Racer. These are all better shoes. Even the Hoka Rocket X, I think, is a faster, more exciting shoe. But if you're looking at it more as a kind of versatile plated trainer racer that does gear up for those kind of ultramarathon events, it's got a bit more to it, I'd say. Now, like I say, I don't run road ultramarathons, any ultramarathons. If I did, tomorrow I had a 50k or 100k, I'd probably still be pulling on the Alphafly, I think would be my instinct. But with the X3, you get a more natural, stable ride than those kind of bouncy carbon shoes. Even though this upper is a bit floppy at times. You don't get the raw pace, you don't get the energy from the foam, but you do get maybe a slightly more relaxed ride that might serve you well over those long distances. I think it's a shoe you could use for a lot of training very happily. I think it's a nice, comfortable shoe, and it ticks off the miles easily enough. I just don't think it's particularly good at fast stuff. And for my purposes, I'd certainly be looking more at the Endorphin Speed, the DV8 Nitro, in a similar price bracket. doing a great job of being a kind of plated trainer option, even though it's obviously a nylon plate in the Speed. They're all faster, more exciting. They do great work on kind of long runs. They're comfortable and easy runs. This gears more towards the long run side of things. And it's not slow, but I don't think it's got that kind of top tier pace that I'd want from a shoe when I'm spending this much money to get a plated shoe. But yeah, all in all, yeah, maybe it will tick the box for you as that kind of more stable plated option. I just don't think it's a particularly exceptional shoe. I think there's better options out there for your money, certainly in my use case scenario.
So my verdict on the X3 is that it's a shoe that didn't really jump out at me in any of the runs that I did. And, you know, I didn't absolutely love the X2, but I definitely loved more about the X2 than I did on the X3. I can appreciate the changes that Hoka has made here in terms of the upper, making it more breathable, more comfortable, and it is from that point of view, but ultimately the upper didn't 100% work for me. I think it was nicer on the X2. I think the X2 felt nicer to run shorter and quicker, and also go a little bit longer as well. It's £160. If I was looking for a shoe that could do a mixture of things, could run a little bit longer, you could run shorter stuff in it, well, I think maybe this is where the shoe has tried to kind of try to be a bit of everything, but mainly to be one for kind of longer runs. I would think something like the Endorphin Speed 2, which the upper is definitely different on that, a little bit maybe more locked in, so maybe not as accommodating for kind of longer stuff. But I think you can run quick, you can run slow in that shoe. I'd throw the Mach 4 in there as well, which would be cheap in this as well. So yeah, my verdict on the X3. I haven't absolutely loved this shoe. I struggle to find where it would sit in my rotation currently. I don't think it would replace any shoes that I use right now for any of my sessions.
So my verdict on the Hoka Carbon X3, very solid shoe, very enjoyable shoe. I think it does the job. I enjoy running this shoe. I don't really notice it too much on my feet, but I've never had a problem with it when I'm out running on it. And I like the fact that it can deliver a range of uses. So if you're going out and you're like me and you don't really know what sort of run you're going out for, I'm not like Nick. He's got a really set training plan, so he knows exactly what speed and how far he's going to run every time he goes out. I'm a little bit different than that. When I leave the house, I think I might go for a 10k. It might turn into a 20k. I might go faster. I don't really know. And this is a good shoe for doing that. It just means that you have that option of running faster if you want, or just staying slow, and you don't need to have a different pair of shoes on. At no point do I ever go out wearing this shoe thinking I wish I hadn't worn this shoe, because it's not the right shoe for the training that I'm doing. It just sort of ticks a lot of boxes, and it's a very nice versatile option for doing that. At £160, I think it's well priced as well. It sits quite comfortably below the sort of super shoes that cost around £220 at the moment. So if you want a nice versatile shoe with a carbon plate in, it's a good alternative for that, because it's considerably cheaper. You won't get that same experience you're getting with some of those super shoes. It doesn't feel bouncy, it doesn't feel like it's helping you go faster, but it's just a good solid shoe. I would say that I think the Hoka Rocket X is a better alternative, just because that shoe feels a little bit lighter on the feet. It feels like it's more designed for racing. I still don't notice the carbon plate as much in it, but it does feel like I can run faster in that shoe. So as an all-rounder, I think the Rocket X is probably just a little bit better than the Carbon X3 and the previous two versions, in fact. Alternatives to the Carbon X3, I would say it wouldn't be any shoe that sits in that sort of super shoe higher echelons, because I don't think this shoe is competing with those. But if you're looking for an all-rounder daily shoe that has the ability to go fast if you want it to, I'd probably say the Hoka Mach 4 is a better alternative. It just feels a little bit softer. It doesn't have a carbon plate in it, but I don't think that makes a massive difference. Between these two shoes, if you hadn't told me this had a carbon plate in it, I probably would have assumed that neither of them had a carbon plate in. So I don't think that's a big issue for these shoes. I just think the Mach 4 is just a little bit more enjoyable to run in. It's a little bit softer, and I just enjoy that shoe a bit more to run in.
But my overall verdict is this is a good shoe. It's got a happy shoe to run in. I like to lace it up. I have enjoyed just being out for a plod in it now. I just did 9 miles at a very, very, very sort of steady pace for me. Those new knit uppers are nice and comfortable. They're kind of soft and protective without being kind of too sinking and too squishy. I think there's a kind of good sort of ground contact underneath these, which I quite like. Now, it could be a good ultra choice, but I think it's mainly for road and ultras where you're going to be encountering kind of lots of dry and quite compact terrain rather than anything that's anywhere near kind of slippy. There's just not enough grip on the underside of these for me to take it off-road or on anything steep and that might be slippery. So that's kind of a limit to its ultra kind of performance here in the UK as well. Overall, I think if it was a little bit cheaper, it'd be a great rotation shoe. It's an easy one to lace up when you're going to go out and run out some kind of easy to sort of slightly faster clip miles. But I think there are better shoes out there that I would be choosing first at this price point.
Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click that little bell icon. And check the channel out for all the other videos we've got from the latest road and trail shoes, as well as headphones and watches out at the moment. Thanks a lot for watching. See you soon.